any other.
This is right, Arab.
Hello and welcome to WION Live broadcast from Washington, D.C. I'm Simon Marks. To give you a fair idea of what is happening on the ground in Afghanistan, we're going to begin today with some video from Kandahar. The video that you're seeing on the screen was filmed from inside a Humvee operating on the outskirts of Kandahar city. It captures the moment of attack as the Afghan army commandos on board were on their way to rescue a stranded member. The Taliban unleashed terror. Using heavy machine guns, they fired rocket-propelled grenades at the Afghan forces. A gun battle ensued as the convoy made its way to the stranded officer, who was then hurriedly loaded onto one of the convoy vehicles amidst a hail of bullets. This is just one of the many offensives by the terror group the Taliban, which has been dramatically emboldened by the withdrawal of US and NATO forces. We'll get you more details, but first, let's take a look at all the day's top headlines. Former US President George W. Bush has criticized the US troop withdrawal from Afghanistan, calling it a mistake. He says the biggest victims of the Taliban rampage will be Afghan women and girls who will suffer what he calls unspeakable harm. India's External Affairs Minister tweets after an SCO contact group meeting on Afghanistan. Jaishankar says the world is against the seizure of power by violence and force, and that such actions will not be legitimized. Spurred by former President Jacob Zuma's jailing, crowds clashed with police and ransacked shopping malls in cities across South Africa. 72 people are now dead and over 1,200 arrested. Myanmar's COVID crisis is worsening. Residents in Yangon waited for hours in queues to get oxygen cylinders as supplies dried up across the city. Reports indicate a surge in cases at overcrowded prisons filled beyond capacity with anti-coup dissenters. Weeks after announcing a unilateral ceasefire, the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed vows to defend and repel attacks by Ethiopia's enemies. This as rebels in Tigray launch a fresh offensive to regain territory. And France celebrates its 2021 Bastille Day under the shadow of the pandemic. President Macron presides over the ceremony, which marks the start of the French Revolution back in 1789. Here in Washington, the Pentagon says America's troop pullout from Afghanistan is 90% complete. Today, as the terror group the Taliban continues to make territorial gains, former US President George W. Bush has criticized the withdrawal of US and NATO forces from Afghanistan. Speaking to a German broadcaster, the former president said, quote, "Afghan women and girls are going to suffer unspeakable harm. This is a mistake. They're just going to be left behind, to be slaughtered by these very brutal people, and it breaks my heart." The former Republican president who sent troops to Afghanistan in autumn of 2001 after the September 11th attacks on New York's World Trade Center and the Pentagon here in Washington says he believes German Chancellor Angela Merkel feels the same way. The US and NATO forces began the process of troop withdrawal in early May. President Biden says it will be complete by the end of next month. 20 years after they arrived in war-torn Afghanistan, with most of the 2,500 US and 7,500 NATO troops already gone, they're leaving Afghan forces to fight an emboldened Taliban. Afghan President Ashraf Ghani visited Balkh province in the north of the country to assess the ongoing situation. According to a Tolo News report, Ghani said that the security situation across the country will improve significantly in the next 3 months. President Ghani also said that the Taliban's backbone will be broken and all areas captured by the outfit will be retaken soon. His visit comes at a time when the Taliban has made major territorial gains in the northern provinces, including Balkh. Ghani met journalists and activists and stressed the need to remain united. Meanwhile, an 11-member team of Afghan politicians is expected to travel to Doha by the end of this week. The aim of their one-day visit is to hold talks with the Taliban. The Afghan delegation will include the head of the High Council for National Reconciliation, Abdullah Abdullah, and former President Hamid Karzai. So far, it is not clear who will lead the Taliban delegation. The Doha talks, slated for July the 17th, come at an absolutely crucial time. Pakistan is trying to convince Afghanistan to have a pre-talk conversation before resuming dialogue with the Taliban. Karzai recently assured the Afghan people that the stalled peace talks between the government and the Taliban would restart soon. He called on both sides to stop fighting.
My advice to both parties is to stop fighting, especially the Taliban. Capturing districts alone is not going to get you anything. Peace is in your best interest.
Moving on now, wildfires continue to rip through the western US as the region reels under extreme heat and drought. The region has been witnessing extreme heat waves over the past few weeks, smashing records everywhere from Southern California up the coast to Oregon. Thousands of firefighters across 12 states are battling wildfires that have burnt a total of more than 850,000 acres as of now. The Beckwith complex, the largest wildfire burning in California, has burnt more than 91,200 acres alone. Just over a quarter of the fire has been contained so far. A wildfire raging in Oregon is currently the largest in the country, burning more than 200,000 acres across the state. The Bootleg fire, which has been burning since July the 6th, is now the largest active blaze, covering an area larger than the size of New York City. As of Tuesday, the raging blaze has destroyed 54 structures and over 20 homes in Klamath County. Fire officials, meanwhile, have issued a warning saying that the blaze will continue to spread in areas with above-average temperatures and will only be fueled by the high winds that are now blowing in the region. The probe into the assassination of Haiti's President Jovenel Moïse is ongoing. In the latest developments, a Miami-based security firm is said to have been directly involved in the killing. According to the newspaper The Miami Herald, the CTU security firm hired former Colombian soldiers. The report said that the firm's name came up during the interrogation of suspects. At least 26 Colombians have been arrested in Haiti. The newspaper added that the firm's owner is now untraceable and little is known about his whereabouts. He's said to be a Venezuelan and faced financial troubles in the past. This is not the first time that names of the US-based agencies and people came up in the probe. Earlier, Haitian authorities arrested an informant with the US Drug Enforcement Agency over suspicion of taking part in the assassination. According to a report, the informant was not actively working with the DEA at the time of President Moïse's killing. The US says that it has been assisting Haiti in the investigation. Meanwhile, Haitians are concerned about the deployment of foreign troops. This as the government in Port-au-Prince sought US help in stabilizing the country in the aftermath of President Moïse's assassination on July the 7th. Military veterans have said that foreign intervention would be a humiliation for Haiti. Activists have instead asked the government to involve civil society in a bid to improve the situation in the country.
So civil society has no claim on power. What we want is we want to stop being spectators to exactly that, bad actors, bad scenario, that's what we want. We want to be involved in the choices that Haitians are making for our future.
South Africa is descending into chaos. 6 days on, looting and rioting continue. The violence has claimed now over 70 lives. And this is South Africa right now. These visuals are from Durban in KwaZulu-Natal, the third most populous city in the country. This aerial footage shows smoke rising from a Durban warehouse after looters stuffed cars with electronics, goods and clothes. And this is another disturbing moment. A mother in Durban forced to throw her baby to safety after the building they were in was allegedly set on fire by looters. After widespread rioting, a crackdown has begun, the police continuing to detain suspected looters and confiscating looted goods. While in Gauteng province the looting is still continuing, these are scenes from Ekhorhilgeni, east of Johannesburg. Despite shops and malls being practically emptied over the last few days, people continue to make their way into buildings in the hopes of finding any merchandise that may have been left behind. The countrywide protests were initially sparked by the imprisonment of former President Jacob Zuma, but they have since become more general and widespread.
We are not late, we are busy protesting here. Yeah, we are getting inside. Yeah. Bring Zuma outside. Bring Zuma, replay.
Though they were triggered by Jacob Zuma's jailing, the unrest reflects growing frustration at failures by the ruling African National Congress to address inequality. But on the ground, it's businesses that are suffering. With almost nothing left in their stores, small shop owners fear that it won't be business as usual going forwards.
We spend all our lives doing something for the community, yeah? And this is what we get in return from looting. I mean, when is it ever going to come to an end? When will it come to an end? We don't know. It's not right. To rebuild a business like this, it costs us a fortune. We're going to get you from here. Rather, we just pack up and go. What do you reckon? Is it ever going to stop?
Community members across the country are cleaning up, or in some cases protecting businesses, as they feel insufficiently supported by the authorities. To quell the looting, about 2,500 soldiers have been deployed to help the overwhelmed police force. But these numbers are dwarfed by more than 70,000 troops deployed to enforce last year's coronavirus lockdowns. Our correspondent Keldon Ongmu sent us this report from the heart of the conflict in Gauteng province.
I am at Chris Hani Crossing Mall. This is the recent mall that has been attacked yesterday by the looters. Part of this mall was also set alight. Here are the firefighters. They were quick to react and they say they were able to douse the fire. They've been busy since yesterday. I spoke to some of them and they said they've been busy since last night. Huge police presence, both from the South African Police Services as well as Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department officials are here. This is one of the trucks that the police has brought to confiscate some of the things that the looters were taking. But you know, it's very surprising. Upon our arrival here, there's a heavy police presence, but the way community members are not fazed at all. Some of them were still trying to get through the fence and help themselves to some of the shops. You can see live on visual here. Police are making an arrest. One of this person was trying to get in and take the little of what has been left in the stores. You can see here, there's the EMPD as well as the SAPS officials. These are some of the people that have still trying to get into what has been left, the little that has been left. Just look at the conditions of the shops here. Here is one of the shops. They're just trying to get their hands on the little that is left in the shops. Hello.
Hi, Lily.
Are you guys employees here?
Yeah.
So how do you really feel about this?
We feel so very bad.
So now, you don't have a job. What are you going to do?
Oh, we don't have a job, madam, now. And we don't know what we're going to do. But only God knows, guys. We don't know. We lost our job. Really lost our job. And we don't have nothing. Even now, we don't have nothing. Because we're waiting for payment on 15. Obvious when like the shop is like this. Obvious, madam.
What would you like to say to the community members that are doing this?
I want to say to them, guys, the way once again Akona, guys, is so very bad. Because now we lose our job, we don't have nothing.
Yeah, some of the employees trying to help get whatever they can in the truck. This is actually a butchery that has been looted. So this is the current situation right now. You know, the pandemic has already hit the country so hard. So many people have lost their jobs. And now this, it's really going to take a lot for the country to rebuild. This is Kalden Almo from Krishani Crossing for WION World is One.
Now, of course, tens of thousands of Indians residing in South Africa are living on the edge as the nation faces one of its worst riots in decades. India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar has spoken to his South African counterpart, tweeting that the government was doing its utmost to enforce law and order. He stressed that the early restoration of normalcy and peace remains the overriding priority. Many Indians in the country own decades-old businesses and shops, but the volatile situation has meant unprecedented financial losses for many of them.
The ongoing violent protests and looting in South Africa's 2 provinces has brought the economy to a standstill. The protests that started in former President Zuma's home province, KZN, soon spread to the country's economic hub, Gauteng. The Indian diaspora, which forms a huge chunk of the population, has also been affected by the turmoil in the African country.
I'm living in Durban, South Africa since 17 years. I was doing business. My 3 shops, 1 warehouse have looted. My all friends are doing business here are looted. We are struggling here. Our families are crying. We are suffering. I am very sick. I can't even speak now. We are staying without food, without home. We are very bad. Please help us, however.
Indians living in South Africa say they have never witnessed anything like this ever, calling for all sides to maintain peace and harmony.
Last 2 days have been the most turbulent days of my experience in Durban, and the kind of rampant looting vandalism and absolute lawlessness and anarchy which is going around. It is an outstanding event, I can say. This doesn't do any good to the society and the country.
There are over 1.5 million Indians residing in South Africa. The majority of Indians live in and around Durban, which is one of the worst affected cities due to protests. Despite the worsening situation, the Indian High Commission has so far refrained from issuing any advisory to its citizens. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Now to Iraq. On Monday, a massive fire tore through a coronavirus hospital ward in the south of the country. 92 people lost their lives in the mishap and over 100 were injured. It was Iraq's second such tragedy in just 3 months, and grieving families are accusing the authorities of negligence.
In the southern Iraqi city of Nasiriyah, people pick through the rubble of a burned-out coronavirus hospital. Initial investigations indicate that a fire engulfed the building after sparks from faulty wiring spread to an oxygen tank which exploded. Dozens of people died here on Monday night and over 100 more were injured. Khazal Ghalim witnessed the blaze.
The front door was burning and the back door was closed, so people couldn't get out. But before the fire broke out, some of them managed to get out, and afterwards people were stuck inside and the ceiling fell on them. We managed to take out some people, but they were suffering, and the rest of them burnt and died. There are families who are still searching for their relatives.
The following distressing images filmed by Reuters show rows of bodies retrieved from the fire. On Tuesday, funerals were held in Najaf, around 150 miles northwest of Nasiriyah, to remember those lost. 3 of Imad Hashim's family members died.
It killed the patients and those accompanying them. There were no fire extinguishers nearby, no ambulances, no water to put out the fire. People ran to get the corpses out. The people hardly found the corpses. They were completely charred. The last thing I remember was walking around the corpses. There was nothing.
Anger spread among Iraqis gathered at Nasiriyah's morgue as they waited to receive relatives' bodies. They blame local authorities for negligence. A medic whose shift at the hospital ended a few hours before the fire broke out said the absence of basic safety measures like a fire sprinkler system or simple fire alarm meant it was an accident in the making. Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi ordered the suspension and arrest of health and civil defence managers in Nasiriyah on Monday, as well as the Al Hussein Hospital's manager.
A cruise ship operated by Genting Cruise Lines on a so-called cruise to nowhere returned to the city-state of Singapore after a 40-year-old passenger tested positive for COVID-19. Nearly 3,000 passengers and crew have now been confined to their cabins until test results are out and contact tracing is complete.
A Singapore cruise liner returned to its port after a passenger was suspected to have COVID-19. That's according to Singapore's tourism board on Wednesday, which added the 40-year-old passenger tested positive on board the Genting-operated cruise ship, despite testing negative prior to the trip, as required in pre-departure. The ship was a so-called cruise to nowhere. Meanwhile, the nearly 3,000 guests and crew were asked to stay in their cabins, and all onboard leisure activities were suspended. Passengers were asked to stay in their cabins until test results and contact tracing was complete. Genting did not immediately comment. Singapore, which has seen relatively few COVID-19 cases, last year began allowing a limited number of luxury liners to operate, but the global industry has taken a major hit amid the pandemic, with some of the earliest outbreaks found on cruise ships.
And that's all we have for you today on WION Live broadcast from Washington, D.C. But we're going to leave you with these visuals from the Goodwood Festival of Speed Motoring in southern England, where Britain's own Ironman, Richard Browning, founder of the UK-based Gravity Industries, has unveiled his newest suit powered by electricity. The previous suits were powered by jet fuel. I want to try one. It looks like Ironman is now going environment friendly. Take a look.
So the electric version is really, I suppose, a physical manifestation of our desire to constantly push the boundaries of what's possible. You know, it is right on the margin of what's possible because of energy density in batteries. And yet we've actually managed to go and get it to work today.
This is right, Arab.